welcome to the Stoa. It's nice to see some familiar faces here, so you're all welcome. And I'm going to do a little framing here, and then we are going to jump to the interview with Toke. And if you have any questions, we are going to do a Q&A part after the interview, so you can write your questions in the chat so we can have them answered after the interview. So I am Amanda. I am a flow game practitioner, and I learned this practice, the practice of the flow game, with Toke. And when I started coming to the Stoa this year, around April, I was fascinated by this space where we practice dialogue and wisdom. And I thought it would be a good idea to bring the flow game to the space. So I invited Toke to come here and share his journey, share his wisdom around the flow game, around crafting questions. And we're going to talk a lot about questions and how to craft powerful questions. So thank you, Toke, for being here with us today. And if you're ready, we can start. I think you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm ready.
Okay. Okay. So I would like to start asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how the flow game arose for you in your life, and so we can start to dig into this story.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is. Looks like we are all across many time zones. My name is Toke Moeller. I live in Denmark. I'm in my autumn. I will turn 74. I have worked across the planet, but most importantly, I'm the same human being that was born 73 years ago. And I hold on to that, knowing that being who I am beyond all the things I have done is more important than all those things. I'm an apprenticing grandfather. I spent a lot of years traveling across the planet in my little contribution to see what could I, maybe more than anything, to just live peacefully and as kindly as I can on this beautiful planet that we are on. And I have also discovered over my life that I somehow feel very strongly about preventing war. Small, big. I'm born right after the Second World War. We were occupied by the Nazis here for 5 years. My parents were in the resistance movement. And I've studied through both stories from my family and also terror of war. Second World War, First World War, all these wars. I never understood, the little child in me never understand why anybody could think that war could be a solution for anything. And yet we have practiced it diligently, certainly in Europe, for more than 3,000 years. So I set out early to begin to discover how could I find my own peace, so that somehow I could be harmonizing more with nature than with the madness of angry human beings. And in this process, I began to look, discover, find, co-create with others any practices that would help me both find some inner strength and also to be a servant of life in the world. It's been a fun time, I know. I had a stroke 5 years ago. I was about to, go, but then I got another 5 years so far, and it was actually a great gift because I realized that life is really precious. It only happens when we are here in this human body, and I think it's a fantastic time to be alive. So in that kind of context, I have been digging and practicing. More than anything, I'm a practitioner, I would say. And whatever we can do to find back to the appreciation of life, to be conscious of life, and to learn how to work together, even if we do not agree with each other. We're still human beings beyond all that. So hosting myself to be conscious in the world is a core practice in my life. And the flow game somehow arrived as one of those tools that can support in that fine art.
Thank you. Yeah. And Toke, could you explain to us, could you share with us what is the flow game and how do you see it as a practice and its potential to the world right now?
So it's a tricky kind of thing. I have found that you can never really give justice to explain a practice that helps you become conscious. It just becomes flat a little bit when you try to just describe it, but I'll do my best and give you a few pointers. But the best is to, as Amanda is offering to, if any of you want to play the flow game, if you haven't, she will offer some online games afterwards with some of the other flow hosts, of whom I can see some of you here. But it's a hosted process that helps us find, it's a hosted fractal process. The fractality of nature fascinated all of us when we began to discover this. How nature fractally organizes every moment and manifests whatever we call nature and this planet and this universe. And so the structure of the game is fractal. Its purpose, if you use it with care, consciousness, and a good dose of love for life and humanity, and that helps us become conscious of things that may be difficult to find clarity of when you're alone with. So you can play it as an individual. We have created cards that can help teams find clarity and togetherness and connectedness and slow down, maybe more than anything, of the speed of this society is running human beings running very fast from meeting to meeting. But where's the wisdom in it? Where's the sense of all of it? So the game, and it's a game using questions and the concept of a game. When we began to discover this, we didn't know, we were not trying to create a game. This is actually one of the interesting things. We weren't saying, hey, no, we want to create this game. We wanted to just discover a way for ourselves to begin with. We happen to be a little, very diverse group of 8 people. And then somebody, one of the women had her first baby, and he became our mascot. We realized we were working for him. He liked to sit at the table with us, and we were just, he reminded us of not just work for now, but for the next generation. So, but we wanted to find something in which a process that could be hosted very simply together with other people who wanted to be in learning together and to discover maybe not intellectual answers, but somehow the kind of clarity, this is the way to go after some contemplation, after sparring with other people. Somehow at one point you just you can feel the movement forward, you can feel the direction in your being, in your consciousness. This is the kind of clarity, that where clarity becomes an action in itself. If you remember that sense, and so, but clear of what? Many people come and thank us when they have played the game because they say, I'd never had a place where I could ask life important questions in a little collective of people who want to learn. So this is that kind of thing. And it can help. If you say that there are 3 balls that any adult human being has to juggle. One ball is your learning journey in life. Learning to survive, learning to thrive, learning to be yourself and be with other humans. Then there's the earning ball, how to make an honorable living. And then there's how can I contribute to my community, to the world, to whatever you want to, you choose to serve. So juggling these 3 balls seems to be a challenge for many human beings. And we've somehow found that the game, the questions in the game, that's the wisdom pattern we are using in the game, can help create the conditions for the journey of self-discovery that we are all on to be something you can consciously observe in yourself and with others, if that makes sense. And then the fun thing about the game is, you throw a dice and things happen, and there's a certain dynamic to it. I've just come from a leadership conference for the past Monday and Tuesday with 60 leadership groups of 17 schools in one of the big municipalities here in Denmark, where we used the game as part of their coming together as a learning community and helping each other out. So they played the team game. We had 8 simultaneous games. They played the team game to see how they could collaborate in service of the kids and the pupils in all of these schools. And then on the last day, they had a personal game where they could see how they could individually contribute more, and can be used in so many ways. It keeps surprising me with the applications.
Right. Sorry. Thank you, Toke. Yeah. And also, if any of you here in this call have this type of question, a question that you have as an intent for your life, and you want to share this question with us here, you can also write it in the chat, because Toke can help us sharpen this type of questions and It's about finding the right words and the right way to put them together, so you can feel that, oh, this is my calling, this is my question now, and I want to explore this question with other people. We will be having next week a session where we will actually play the game. So if anyone is curious, we will have the chance to actually experiment and see for ourselves. But what I wanted to ask from you, Toke, since you have, like, you started doing this practice in the 80s or 90s, when was it?
So it's an interesting journey, because I don't know how many of you are aware of the practice we call the art of hosting and harvesting conversations that matter. But some of us were in the 80s, not in the 90s, beginning to discover that, linear, hierarchically created expertise kind of meetings and conferences didn't go as far as if we were in the exploration of what kind of leadership is needed now and for the future. Looking at all the hierarchies becoming so big and so, over organized, that the learning and the humanity and the relationships suffered. And still going on, isn't it? So we were in that question, and how may hosting for learning to arise between people, between us, in service of things that we wanted to somehow simplify, humanize, crack all of the bigger problems in the world that we ourselves has created, and we have to somehow find out to find better ways. So we were in that in the 19s, that we began to discover and experiment with these participatory co-creative processes: open space, the ancient way of the circle, appreciative inquiry, the World Cafe, and we were practicing it. And then we discovered that these methodologies were fantastic gifts, but the consciousness of how you host them and who you are when you invite people to be in these kind of processes were equally important. And so we called it the art of hosting, coming from the root of our being, that we all have deep hospitality in us. And if we can leverage that as a way of leading rather than trying to control other people all the time, and then you squeeze the beautiful juice of learning out of coming together. So in that process, we ended up being these 8 people who asked this question: how could we create a process that could help us find strength when we initiate something new? Many of us had quit our jobs and started little for more than profit companies. Some were students, but we were in transition out of industrial society. And over hierarchical ways of doing things. And somehow that it took us a year, 1987, 89, 88, 87, 88, we discovered it. And realized that if it could work for us, it may work for others too. We were not trying to be smart. We were just longing for this very basic need, at least I have, and I've met many others who have it. Can we learn how to act consciously and with clarity, and find that before we act, and not to run around and act all the time with, no acting from the head, rather from the wisdom that is within us. And so it was fantastic. The first time we tested it outside here was in San Francisco, actually, with the network called Pioneers of Change that some of my younger friends had created. And I remember sitting in a house in San Francisco in 1998, playing 3 simultaneous games, Jan, Monica and me, with these fantastic young activists for climate change and the world and injustice, younger friends of ours. And somehow it worked. Somehow, there was something there. It was very complicated. We have simplified it a lot since then. But somehow we realized we had to care for this. Something had been born, emerged, that we couldn't put back in the box. And so we have been stewarding and caring for it. And now it's beginning to unfold into being played in prisons, so lifetime prisoners, prison guards and lifetime prisoners, and leadership of prisons, playing the flow game together, being used in universities and schools. I use it when I go on solo retreats. It's my traveling partner. And of course, it can be used. And it's an interesting thing, because somehow I think as we have cared for it and honed it and practiced and learned and refined the questions, we may have hit something that is that speaks to the human being under all the different cultures. And first time playing it in a village in Zimbabwe with the Shona people. And how could it, something that we had found here in Denmark, never been in Zimbabwe before. I was invited by one of those pioneers of change people, Maya and Knut, who have started the Gofunda village in Zimbabwe. But somehow it worked there. And remember there was this guy said, where does these questions come from? And where's this pattern? He thought it was a bit of a voodoo kind of thing, but then later he relaxed. And I love it that it's so simple. It doesn't have any particular color, or it's not particularly spiritual or not particularly professional. It's just a game for human beings. The game we already play, eh? But it's just a way of creating these important containers with the child cannot be born without a group. Meaningful conversations and really coming together and being those human beings that we are together. We need these containers of these. A house is not enough. But what's the container for the process? My friend David Isaacs says, what's the womb with a view?
Yeah, and I was thinking, because you started this in the 90s, now the game has 30 years old, more or less. So it's a young adult in his journey. And now we have around 3,000 or 300. I'm sorry, my English.
300.
300, yeah.
With flow host community. Yeah, we are around 300 now.
We have around 300 people that were trained in this practice and are spreading the practice. And I'm curious to know from you, what were your major life lessons in this journey of putting the game forward and creating all this organic structure, because it's very organic, right? The way we arrive at the flow game, the way we feel called to become a host, and the way the trainings are done. And I'm curious to know from you personally, what are the stories that illustrate these life lessons in the process of making the flow game happen?
You only have another half hour, so keep it short. So I'll just maybe speak of a few points, because you get me to tell stories, it can flow on. But first of all, we trusted that we could find, we started being 4 people over dinner, realizing that the real strength and clarity and friendship and purpose that we needed when we had left our jobs and either started a little company or an NGO or a project was most of that an inner thing. Strength to face and dance with chaos and life as it flows. And so we were looking, and we were at the same time, we were all really interested and still are in, how does nature organize? Whether you call it living systems or whatever names are for it, but look, for millions and billions of years, nature have organized. It's never stopped. And would it not be time to stop being so freaking arrogant as a human race and say we think we know everything, or we can invent wisdom? To me, wisdom is, knowing life and knowing how to flow with life. It's not nice words. And so this seeking of coming back to the self-organizing principles, we were already in, and certainly still are. And we were, many of us, also experimenting with these social architectures, these different methodologies. So you will, if you get to know the game, it's almost like all of those methodologies are embedded in the game. And then, of course, game is a game. So trusting that it's possible to prioritize and take seriously a more natural way of organizing. And I think some of Margaret Wheatley's early books, The Simpler Way, and those were great inspirations for us. And certainly the Tao Te Ching for me, my practice of Aikido, where you in motion learn how to flow with the life force and not just have ideas about it. So second thing, co-creation in a diverse group who trust each other. We were 8 people, we are still mates. One has unfortunately passed away from leukemia, but so friendship with purpose. And then when you find something that's worth something, and that life, people, situation show us that it, then caring for it. Not necessarily protecting it, but caring. Like you need to care for a child. Third, we use the game as a partner. It's not just a tool. So when we use it in developing the game, we will play the game. So part of the core group that holds sort of the more organizational and production type, and find out the sort of the basic principles. We are the flow game is part of that group, and we activate it by playing it. So maybe, and one more thing is that I was thinking, because I knew this was happening today, well, why do we need a host for this game? Couldn't we just sell it? And we certainly could. And we could probably make a lot of buck on it if we wanted to, but we don't. We want to honor the nature of the game and how gently and naturally it arrived to us. Somehow we discovered it. And the pattern of the 7 directions is an ancient pattern that exists, you know, in so many cultures and have done good for so long. Of personal courage, community, vision, action, and heaven and earth. And then me, little human being, asking for help as the center. So so the host, the game, the players, those who have a question, and then life itself flows. Those 4 things, and they come together with care and respect and lightness. If you want to awaken consciousness, you need a, you know, need a conscious human being to awaken consciousness in other people. Because it's there, but we just put our focus in so many other places, not in the here and now. I think this is really what surprised these school teachers, that they had time together in the here and now, just listening to each other in a way they probably, at least in the work context, never had tried before. And we just got really high, much appreciation from them in the end of it. So there's that thing of a caring host who consciously, of course, knows the practice of the game, but also creates that invitation where people can feel welcome and safe enough to be daring in the kind of question you ask and explore in life. You know, I had a question come to me. I was sitting on the banks of Loch Lomond. This is in 1965. I'm in high school. I've walked the lowlands of lower part of Scotland with my friend, who's still my friend. We are still mates many years later. And we are coming down from the hill down to Stirling. We've been up living in the up there for 5 days. And somehow I felt a question coming to me. I turned to him and I said, Per, do you want to come with me to India when we have finished high school? I want to drive to India. I think it's an interesting place. There's things to learn there we can't learn here in Denmark in the 60s. He says, why? He says, because I want to somehow get away from everything that society has taught me, to just be free enough to see myself in a different kind of, be mirrored in a different kind of way. So the question became something like, who am I really in this world? Why the hell am I here? Or why the hell am I here? Took me on a big journey. I'm still on it. And 2 years later, I was on my way with my 3 friends down the road for half a year. So just a little, and it doesn't have to be those kind of questions, but the question that if you want to play, don't play because you want to know what the game is. Play because you have a question you would like to explore. that's important to you, and you maybe not have an answer to it, but it's there somehow, it doesn't want to go away. I moved into the question part, Amanda, but
Yeah, I think it's a great timing for us to move into a more practical, maybe part of this session where we can try to craft our own question and our own intent, and Toke can give a little bit of feedback on whether this is a...
This is what Amanda hopes, that I somehow am a master of this. But,
yeah, because I
maybe
remember...
not, let's see, but it doesn't... I'm just fascinated by the power of good questions.
Yeah.
Because if you can ask a good question, then you can somehow, it's really what it opens inside of our longing to know more about how to live well and kindly. But before we go there, is there any question around what I have shared that maybe we could just have a little moment for that, and then we can see if we can look at questions that people want to play with, but I don't want to assume that you guys want to play. No, this is not something we are trying to make happen. It's somehow, there's a naturalness to it that needs to be respected. Did it make sense what I'm sharing with you? Is there any, important thing that, or a question around any of that could be asked? If not, it's all right.
Yeah, feel free to pop off mute. There's only 2 questions in the chat, but just maybe to get a feel of the Stoa. Anybody want to play the game that Amanda suggested, just to get a taste of it? You maybe raise your hands on the screen.
Peter, can we play if we feel like we have no idea what we're doing?
That's usually the standard of the Stoa, so I think yes. There seems to be some hunger, Amanda and Toke, to play. Any sense of how to frame that, if that's the case?
Yeah, I think for now, anyone that wants to play can start to think about their question, the question you're going to bring. And even if you don't want to play, you can think about the question that is surrounding you in your life. And usually something that for me, it's like coming to a place of silence and listening to what's present. What is the question that is present with me now? And it can be something that I want to, some movement I want to bring to my life, or something I want to elaborate more. And perhaps we can, Peter and Flavius can ask their questions that are in the chat now, and then we can move to this other part with the questions for the game. Is that clear?
Cool. So I can ask my question that I had in the chat, and then Flavius maybe ask his. So yeah, the question I had was, we used to play a question game here at the Stoa, where someone starts with a question and someone replies with a question and someone replies with a question and so on. And then I find the state of a question really just puts you in a different state of being, and contrasted to answering. And it was pretty salient when you just hear questions for like 30 minutes. So I'm curious, people who play the flow game regularly, is there like state of reality shift? Do they experience reality differently? Is there like some embodied traits that come along with playing this game on a regular basis?
Carrie Ann, Sand, anybody who's a flow host who practiced it would like to?
I think I can. And my name is Deborah. I started practicing the flow game last year, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not making dates here. And but the first time I played was just in the beginning of the pandemic, so March 2020. And it's not like you feel real change in your body or in the way you experience reality, but accepting those powerful questions brings a movement on many other aspects of your life or topics that you have been wondering about, or just you know, sometimes you get those repetition in your mind of thoughts or concerns that you have, and then it just keeps coming to your mind, and then after I played, I had more clarity. So I was able to just find solutions, maybe not necessarily solutions, but find space to have conversations or to broaden the point of view that I had, and get the perspective of other people, share insights that you have, and then in a way that it's not reactive. Many times when we're trying to work something that is deep in our hearts, it's something that is very important for us. We get a sense of fighting for that, and doing the process throughout asking questions, you kind of eliminate this defensive that people might get, and then you actually bring space, you give space to get inputs to really bring a creativity to the table or to the discussion. I think that this was the impact that I had, and then it starts to go to other aspects of your life too. Sometimes it affects your health. You feel better. You stop feeling, I don't know, things that you had been feeling because you are concerned about stuff. And then when this energy is able to flow, it impacts many aspects of your life. I think that was my experience.
Thank you, Deborah. Maybe I'll just add, and there's Monica Ross has also offered something in the chat, but the other thing, one thing is what you get for yourself if you play it, but the other is that you are part of a little group of players. And the game seems to have the ability, when held well, that we get to be in an intimate learning space quite fast, but it's happening in a very slow pace. Where you look, 2-3 hours or something, that the connectivity and respect between people, that the game and the whole condition of the game creates is quite valuable. And then, whether you get to an altered state or not, Peter, I think being conscious in the here and now is a fantastic altered state from being confused and scared, or not feeling connected or lonely. That many millions of people in the world are very lonely, and a lot of our relationship is quite superficial. So there's something about that. Anyway, time is ticking on. What else?
I could jump in and share a little story if it's a good time for it. I think, I mean, everything that's said, I absolutely agree with. I am a flow game practitioner too, a relatively new one. And I've been using it in various types of ways. And like you said, Toke, I'm constantly surprised by the various ways that it can be used and played. And in terms of impact, I think sometimes the biggest impact is of questions and of people coming together in this kind of space and being hosted around questions, is that connection that's been talked about. And sometimes as well, it's the questions that people come with and that the hosts help them to craft and to strengthen, and then the amazingly well crafted questions and images that exist in the game. And I've experienced, again, I think the key thing in terms of impact is connection to self and to others that people talk about. I had to laugh, Toke, when you said that somebody asked, if there was a bit of magic in the cards, because that question often comes up. People go, these cards, out of all of the hundreds of cards that are here, I rolled the dice randomly and chose this card. And there's something beautiful about a question that's so strong that it'll impact people in that way and go, wow, this is the question that I needed right now. Just like the strength of story. And just a really quick anecdote is I hosted a flow game for a few people early on in my practice. And one of the women played the question that she played around, what she was seeking clarity around, was quite general. So none of us who were playing with her really knew what it was that she was seeking or what she was seeking clarity about. That stayed private, but her question was beautifully strong and we all played with her around it. And she wrote back to me a few months later to say, wow, after that flow game, I was struck by such clarity and I just knew what I had to do. So it was a question I'd been struggling with for so long, and just playing it with people that I didn't know around a question that was strong, and I knew what was behind that question, and the rest of you in the flow game didn't. But and that's an example of a huge impact that it had on her, a life-changing impact. So it's not always that huge. Sometimes it's subtle and gradual. But I loved that. Yeah, I just love that she came back to me with that too.
Thank you, Carrie Ann. And less can do it, but it's certainly true that the clarity can be such that it can support you in your life, and you may not discover it right away. And this is another way we are trying to use the game, not to give people false expectations that this is so magic that everything, the universe will open and you will see everything and understand everything. Of course, it's not like that. But when those moments come, whether it's a game or however they come, they are precious. And that an interesting thing, and this is coming back to Peter, what you were saying, the question game, that sometimes you show up with a game, with a question, you play for a while, and then you realize that actually it's a question underneath it that's even more important to you. And so that's shifting. And the more clarity there is in your question, the more clarity you will find in playing and, having conversations with other good people who are sitting around. So sometimes we say it's just a prop to make it possible to have a little bit of a deeper, more focused kind of conversation that otherwise it is not always that available.
Peter, is there any follow-up on that?
Not for me, no. Thank you, Toke.
Okay, I guess we can, if anyone wants to open their microphone and share the question that is alive, maybe Kim or Stephen, maybe we can, or if you don't want to show in the oh, okay, there was a question around having to be something big, like what is mine to give. And then similarly, someone thought of what is my note to play? What do you think, Toke? Are there any feedbacks? Maybe, I don't know.
So are these questions that you would like to just in general understand the usefulness of the game, or is it questions that you would like to play within a game? Let's first have that clear.
Yeah, people are thinking about their questions, and they thought of this this question: what is mine to give? Someone put it on the chat.
What is mine to give as a flow game question? It's beautiful, isn't it? It's simple, it's focused, it's honest. There's a quest. You know, there are nosy questions, and then there are quests. From where question come, it means, you know, there's a journey underneath it. And so what is mine to give? That could be on your life journey, or it could be in a job situation where you're sitting with some friends or in your family. So the context, of course, will make it more or less focused, but beautiful question to ask yourself, whether you ever play the game or not. What is mine to give?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would leave now for anyone that wants to open their microphone and just share what else do you have? And we're here to dialogue, I guess.
I have something, I'm just not quite sure how to frame the question. Could I set a context and then the question? Will that work?
That's a good way to do it.
Okay, so the way I see things today, it could change tomorrow. We're in this big life process. And like, so as far as I can see, it goes out to the stars and planets, and then it's as tiny as molecules and cells in my body. And it all seems to fit together. And sometimes when I recognize there is a me, it doesn't fit anymore. It's like I get in the way of something. So I'm just wondering, given that that happens, because I tried to work with stopping it, that me happening, but it doesn't. So given that that happens, how best do I serve this big life process? So that's a pretty big question.
It's pretty straight. It's pretty straight. It's pretty straightforward question.
Okay.
If it is, you know, to me, I have seen, and this is not just in this context, but in life. And as this process is of life, and those of us who host it are tried to keep it there, not sophisticated. Then if it is truly a quest in you to know a little bit more or discover or have some perspective, even some other people's perspective, and the wisdom of the flow game pattern perspective on you, not as an egotistic human being, but as a living human being with breath and your life experience, it's there. I think that question actually maybe is embedded in the DNA of everybody born on this planet. That's a kind of question, and therefore beautiful question to ask. And maybe the flow game, if you join one of them, you would discover more. And even in asking it, this is how the what's it called, the resonant learning of other players. I saw this happen with these school leaders the other day. Their questions were different, but when the game began and we were having those quiet dialogues and mirroring each other and being mirrored in the game, realized that they were actually pretty similar in their root, maybe not in their formulation, but in their intent and the quality of the humility from where you are. There's a beautiful wisdom that I was taught by one of the elders of the New Chalnuth tribe on the west coast of Vancouver Island, Richard Atleo. He talks about one of the principles of how they have survived as a community for 20,000 years, living out there being whalers. So beautiful man. And he said, this principle is a practice we practice. It's called aphe in Nuu-chah-nulth language. It means it is kind to ask for help. It's a kindness to ask for help. And then comes the edge of the principle. A person who cannot ask for help cannot be trusted. And it's, and maybe this game with so many other things that we are discovering at this time of the big turning of, do we want to live unconsciously, continues to live there and destroy the planet, or do we want to wake up and become humane and kind and respectful, and let the love of life flow through us, not as a religion or a spiritual definition, but as a reality. And that humility to then ask, how may I dance with the great mycelium of life until I go? Beautiful. I think we are about coming to an end of this, aren't we? It's at about an hour, so I don't want to exhaust anyone with that. But I certainly hope that you have taken something from our time together, and that Amanda's kind offering to host a game, that if any of you want to play, or there's a flow hosting all over the planet now, though we are only 300. But you can always look up people if you want to, and see if it is something that can support you.
I just want to give one last opportunity for anyone that wants to share anything, and then we'll move to saying goodbye.
Wow. Thank you for this. I felt that my whole life I've been since very, very little, I've been trying to flow. I was very small when I said this life is like a trick. It's like it's a game. It's not real. It's like the game of the rabbits in the birthday party that the magician takes out. The real is God. It sustains reality. And I always, my feeling was that flowing was the answer, that we needed to flow more. And I don't know exactly. It's hard I feel such a synchronicity with the questions that have been asked here. It's hard to kind of go deep in what is my question, but I think it's a question about how do we get rid of the classroom, let's say, the classroom mode, the traditional classroom mode where we take turns and we actually, there's one person that knows and one center, and we actually, when I listen to you here, it's like I feel there's a new way to communicate, which is much more interactive and much more present in the now. And my question, I think, is how do we get there organically? How do we unwind from this egotistic kind of mode that puts the limelight? Now the limelight is on me, but when this is on me, I actually want to be interrupted. I want the input, and then it's how did you? Because I feel that you've kind of arrived to a way of organically getting to play this game. I still don't understand all the rules of this game, but I think you've found a way to. And this is the game I've been looking for. It's life's game in a way, and it's the future. It's one possible future for humans. We need that more interactive kind of alive, lifelike way of relating. Like we become an organism that is we are in tune. We have different roles. So I don't know if the question is clear by now, but how to go slow at this process, and I think that is the question. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to share, Flavio's, thank you. And for me, it's the same. It's moving out of the classroom and learning life in a new way. That's why I became a flow game host, because it's about revolutionizing, I guess, the way we learn. We learn from our own will and from our own intent to learn something, not from the obligation to learn or from societal expectations. So it's a whole new, it's a different process, and we are learning how to do this here in the Stoa as well. I believe we're doing the same thing here, learning how to learn. Yeah, that's my comment. But it will be very good to have you in the flow game session, so you can sense what it's like, the flow. And yeah. Okay, I'm going to pass to Peter, unless Toke wants to say something.
I just want to say it's wonderful to meet you all, and keep on flowing, guys and girls and humans. Because maybe this world is certainly stuck and crazy, but the flow of life is more real than all of that. Thank you. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Toke and Amanda. And so as tradition at the Stoa, we like to tease you with kind of a what a game is, and then we set up next week to play it. So next week at October 14th at 12 p.m. Amanda will be leading playing the full game. That's for Patreon members, so you can sign up on Patreon. And then to the next session tomorrow, Stoa is doing a collaboration with the Monastic Academy, which is a monastery near Toronto, and John Vervaeke, Daniel Thornton, and Yasna are having a conversation, which is going to launch a 6-day meditation chanting challenge at 5 a.m. That's happening at the Monastic Academy and the Stoa. So you can check that out on the thestoa.ca. It should be a lot of fun. And I hope to see everyone next week to get our flow on. So I'll take it, Amanda, for any closing thoughts.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I was nervous to come here today and speak in English and ask all these questions and also receive you and welcome you. But I guess it was okay, and and it was nice to have Deborah. I don't know if she's still here. Well, we are a community of practitioners, so feel free to join us any moment. You can type flowgame.net and you will find our website and all the hosts all over the world. Yeah, I think, and if you want to come next week, you're more than welcome. Yeah, and thank you, Peter and Toke, for your time and support. Thank you.